or whatever it might be. The other thing, and this may not make sense to you, again, I've got this disease called land development running through my veins, and for some reason, and please don't report me as being crazy, but property talks to me. And I'll drive by a certain site, and for some reason, it just starts talking to me. And when land starts talking to me, I listen, and I start finding everything I can about that piece of land. For some reason, my psyche is saying, I'm interested. I want to know more about that piece. And it doesn't always matter. 9 times out of 10 it leads to nothing because it's locked up or it's in a trust and I can't get to it or whatever. But let me just put it this way. I never buy something that's not interesting to me. It has to have some sort of interest. Once I have a raw piece of land and it's interesting, I find out all the things I can do with it or I can't do with it. And then that helps me determine what I want to pay for the land and if I want to even move forward with it. And the third criteria, and you got to be careful with this one, is you find a deal. You bought it because it was cheap. Sometimes cheap is cheap and sometimes cheap is really expensive. Something looks like it's cheap, but in the end, it turns out to be a long carry. It's going to take you 20 years before you can actually see a return on investment. And by that point in time, you've paid so much in property taxes and carry costs that it may not be worth it. So be careful when you just find a deal, something that seems cheap. Make sure it really is cheap. And I use residual land value again to address that. So as shocking as this might sound, before you go out and do site selection, figure out what it is you want to build or what you want to develop. What's your passion? Life's too short not to be passionate about what you're doing, especially for a living. So figure out what it is you're trying to do. And then the point of the pictures here on the right is that we have some multifamily. I've got some apartments. I've got a neighborhood shopping center. I've got a high rise, whatever it might be. Figure out, what it is that floats your boat. And then when you figure out what that is, let's just say it's apartment complexes. Okay, let's say it's apartment complexes 10 units and less. Okay, fine. You need to figure out in the jurisdiction, meaning the area that you want to develop, the municipality, what zoning is compatible with that. So we understand both the sites that are already zoned for that, and then in the future, what sites might be zoned for that future use. Next is density. Well, it can have the right, or it can have zoning, but if it doesn't allow the density that we need, let's say we want to build 10 units on 1 acre. Well, if the underlying density is only 2 units an acre, well, then that land is wrong for our use. Now, again, we might be able to rezone it, but maybe not. Third is size. Okay, so I just said we want to build 10 units and we'd like to build those on 1 acre. Well, I'm not looking for 50-acre sites. I'm looking for something I can build about 1 acre on. Now, we all know that when we go out and look at land, that it's rare to find the exact perfect piece that meets all of your needs and has nothing extra associated with it. So if I need 1 acre of land, I might span my search for between half an acre and say 3 acres of land to make sure that I capture all of those ones that are just less than an acre and just more than an acre, so I can then make a decision myself whether those meet my need or not. And finally, and I'm not stealing this, I'm giving credit here to Dr. Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. What I'm trying to tell you is begin with the end in mind, and that's how you're going to be successful. What do you need to build? Okay, what land criteria needs to be met in order to build what it is that you're trying to develop? So we're going to start our 6 steps to success. So we want to identify those sites that meet the minimum criteria that we just talked about. We need to determine what the land is worth. And here it says more later, but we just covered the residual land value. So we use residual land value to say, well, what's that land worth for my use? And then, hopefully, that value is close to what they're asking for the property. Well, ideally, they're asking less for the property, right? They're asking for $200,000 for the land, and when you do a residual land calculation, it says it's worth $400,000. Well, that's a dream deal right there. Usually, what will happen is the reverse: is the residual land value will say it's worth $200,000, and they're asking $400,000, which means that you got quite a bit of negotiating to do. Next, we want to make an offer. So you're going to remember, I talked about what's good or bad or what's best. Well, it's all dependent on a matter perspective. My attorney friends say that never use the letter of intent. Why? Because they want you to pay them to do a contract. They wouldn't admit that here on this webinar, but I'm telling you that's what it is. But me, I don't want to use an attorney every time I make an offer on something, so I use a letter of intent, which is basically saying, hey, I'm interested in your property, and I'd kind of like to buy it, and this is how much I'd like to pay for it, and this is how much time I need to inspect it, and this is how much the deposit's going to be, and, are you agreeable to this situation? And it's a non-binding letter that basically lets the owner know I'm interested in the basic terms, and if the answer is, heck no, well, then I know then I'm stopping. But if they say, well, one of these terms doesn't seem acceptable, the rest of them do, well, then let's keep talking, and see if we can get to a deal. And if we can get a letter of intent agreement going there, then I'm going to turn it over to my attorney, and we're going to execute a formal purchase agreement to tie up the land and begin the due diligence process. And we're going to begin with due diligence on Friday, by the way. We're going to conduct that rigorous deep dive and talk more about that, like I said, on Friday. Man, good deals are really hard to find. I do another webinar. It's called Deal Sourcing that you might want to check out. It's recorded. I don't know. I might be doing it live again here in another month or two. It's hard to say. But good deals are hard to find. It takes many hours of searching and talking to brokers and such to find the deals that actually make sense. I swear for every, 300-400 deals I look at, one or two are interesting to me. So for our criteria, we want to be aware of terms used by appraisers and by some know-it-all developers. This concept of highest and best use. It's that concept that says, hey, if you do this one use of the property, it's going to generate the highest sales price, the maximum return on investment, which is good in terms of maximizing things. But I'm going to make a statement about this here in a minute about highest and best use. So if we look at corners and such, wherever you live or wherever you're doing your work, you should be, by driving around, just be able to see this, that gas stations, convenience type uses tend to take up the corners. You want to avoid the highest and best use when it doesn't meet your expertise. So let's just say the highest and best use of this corner is a bank. Well, if you don't know anything about building a bank or developing a bank, then my suggestion is don't build or develop a bank. Either sell to someone who does do banks and take your profit and go do something somewhere else, or do what you do on that piece of property. Let's say you're an apartment builder, right? That's my bottom bullet here. If you know apartments but you don't know gas stations, and some appraiser says the highest and best use of that corner is a gas station, maybe no one else wants to buy it, there's no harm in you developing it as an apartment project, as long as you meet all of your profit thresholds and all the criteria to you. It doesn't matter if you could have made an extra $500,000 if you'd only done the gas station, but instead you did the apartment thing. Stick to what you know. This business has so much risk in it when you start changing and getting away from the things that you know very, very well. So be careful there. So know that when we're looking at urban sites, we often can have multiple uses, and you can call it mixed use, but multiple uses in the same building, and sometimes there can be compatibility issues, like especially when you have food and residential in the same building, because you have trash that can stink and noise issues and that sort of thing. Just keep that in mind. This next bullet, I could talk about this all day long, but I'm just going to spend a minute on it here. You need to make sure that you are in tune with the community. You have to by community, I mean not only the community as in everyone that lives there, but you need to also spend time looking at the site morning, noon, and night. Go on weekdays, on weekends. You want to understand how this property is, how accessible it is, or what impediments may exist that are not readily observable when first looking at it. So I always have a story I tell about my parents. When I was 10 years old, my parents bought their dream home. My dad actually watched the house getting built for a year, only went during the day, and so we closed on the house. We moved into it, and we're unpacking. Actually, we're taking boxes off the truck, and it's late. I think it's like now 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and we finally set up my bed so I could go to sleep. And about 20 minutes after I lay down, what I hear is woo woo. And what it was, so there was a train track about 2 miles up the hill from where my parents bought this house, but because they'd never been there in the evening, they'd never noticed that there's all the train noises. My parents have now lived in the house for 40 years, and let me say they're more than used to it by now, but it took quite a while before we got used to it. So the point of this bullet, again, is that by going to the site different times of the year, different times of the week and the day, you might see things that may impact your desire for the property. Next bullet point, learn this with really the hard way. You need to make sure you meet with the community before the press gets wind of your project. I had a very unfortunate situation where a partner had a lawyer write a verification letter to the local government, and in the end, the public got wind of that letter, and the letter was asking whether we could take a house and turn it into a commercial facility, and the community just exploded like a powder keg. And of course, absolutely the wrong thing. We should, I didn't know the lawyer was going to do that. I didn't know what was going on. And so when you can, if you have an idea, before the cat gets out of the bag, make sure you meet with the neighbors and the local community so they know what you want to do, so you can hear any objections from them directly and maybe even address them before the general public gets wind of what you're planning. I also, when I'm looking for sites, I love looking at aerial photography, Google, and other GIS sites to pick up good stuff. Okay, question here. It says, how does one identify the relevant community groups to meet with, and what is the best form to address them? So, okay, the saying goes, you meet with your friends in groups and your enemies one-on-one. What you don't want to do is take two groups that are going to probably oppose your project and meet with them at the same time, because they're just going to give each other ideas. How do you identify those? Well, and I know this is going to sound too basic, but it's really this simple. I Google the city's name, the town's name. I Google project denied, and I get usually a lot of newspaper articles or internet articles, if you will. And there are people that I call the vocal minority. And it sounds like there's 1,000 angry people, and the reality is there's 4 or 5 people behind the scenes that the paper knows to reach out and get comment on every new project. And so it's those people that I want to, and their names are going to be in the paper. They're not that hard to find. And you try to reach out and make contact with them and see if you can set up a private meeting and discuss what their concerns are and see if there's any way you can mitigate them. And many times you can't. And so then you have to make a really risky decision. Do I move forward and at the risk of upsetting this person even more and then having a long, protracted entitlement period going through the local government? So anyway, that's my advice for finding people and groups. In different jurisdictions also, they might have groups of neighborhood people that you can reach out to and meet with about projects. I highly recommend speaking with your local planners at the local government about, and I say hypothetical intentions. It's not that I'm trying to be dishonest, but I don't want to tell people that I'm thinking about 123 Farmer Avenue. That's way too specific. I'd say, well, in the north end of town, I'm thinking about buying a 2-acre site and building an office on it. What do you think about that? And what I want to hear back is, oh boy, the commissioners really hate when you put commercial in the north end of town. That's the kind of information I'm trying to get from these planners. What kind of pushback I'm going to be seeing from the community or from the politicians. And I don't want to ask just one of them. I mean, if you can get the planning director, you can usually take that one to the bank. But I've been burned in the past by talking with a mid-level planner, and what I got was I thought good information, and then after I'd already lost or had money tied up in the deal, come to find out that someone that had more different knowledge than that person, turns out they were wrong, and you can't do the thing that I wanted to do on the project. So if I'm not talking with the head planner, then I'll talk to the A planner, and then I'll usually want to call back a couple days later or go down there and see if I can meet with a different planner and ask the same questions and see if I get the same answers out of them. And usually I don't like the answer yes either. If the answer is yes, then show me where it is so that I can, well, Joe said I could. No, show me the section of the code that says, that it defines and explains how I can do what I want to do with the property. In this day and age, we don't need to attend a whole lot of public hearings to see what happens to other projects. Many of them are available online, and so I encourage you to do that, or attend the hearings for similar projects to see what the political view is of your kind of project. For some reason, in my local area, there's a commissioner that just cannot stand self-storage buildings, even though I think they're pretty, they look nice. I'm not talking about your old, nasty one-story, not well maintained. I'm talking about these now look like big commercial buildings. They pay taxes. They employ a couple people. They're usually off the beaten path. In other words, they're not consuming, big corners or anything. I don't have a problem with them, but I know that politically, if I want to do a public storage facility, that I better not propose one in that commissioner's district, because it is just not going to happen. They want to see more housing come up in their area. So you need to understand the entitlement process, where it is that you want to develop. And I'll talk more about this on, I think, our 5th session when I get into entitlements. I spend 75 minutes on nothing but entitlements, and I'll talk about the difference of the process for a smaller area or an area that sees less development versus one that sees more development. So we're looking at sites for suburbia. Let me tell you, I got burned really bad. I burned myself, so I'm just here to tell you all my bad things. I was buying land way out in the middle of nowhere because it was cheap. And at the time, that cheap land was doubling and tripling, sometimes in a single year. So that's why, of course, I was out there chasing the land with the next subdivision. But what happened, what was this exogenous impact that I wasn't expecting was gasoline. Gasoline went from $2 a gallon to $5 a gallon in about, a year and a half. And I didn't anticipate that. And so what had happened was people that were willing to live, out in the boondocks, so to speak, and drive in to work at a good job, when the price of gas went to $5, they're like, "Are you kidding me? I can pay twice as much rent now in town, and I'm going to still save more than that in gasoline." So those far out places became a little more difficult. As we get into more electric vehicles, that may become less of an issue. But the point I'm trying to make here is when we're looking for sites in suburbia, proximity is the 90210. So you want to be close to things. So here's the questions, how far to a gallon of gas, a loaf of bread, a cup of coffee, my kid's school, or my job? And so the funny answer I have for all of this is if the answer begins with the word well, like, "So neighbor, how far to get a cup of coffee?" "Well, you see, you just go down the road." Okay, and wrong answer. Okay, what I want to hear is it's right next door. It's right over there. It's convenient, because anything that's not convenient is going to impair absorption. It's going to impair price, and it's going to impair probably your profit margin and maybe even your career. So be careful with that. We want things that are well located. Now, when we're talking about urban sites, convenience is still key. It's actually paramount. So we want to make sure that if we're talking about commercial in a central business district of an urbanized area, that we're within walking distance to transit. We're convenient, right? Because who wants to work at a place that you can't drive there? Oh, and by the way, there's no mass transit to get you there either. We want to make sure that in these more urban environments that we have uses for the employees. Even if you don't have employees, if you're going to be leasing this building to someone, they're going to have employees and they're going to have concerns. Does it meet their concerns? Is there places to eat lunch and so forth? Finally, the second to last bullet on the screen, watch out for historical restrictions too. One of my co-teachers, Alan Razak, who lives and works out of Philadelphia, they have all kinds of historical issues. You really need to understand if you're in an older area, what kind of impediments you may have in the ability to redevelop or augment or supplement existing buildings that are in an area. They can provide some of the coolest architecture and neatest projects. We just did a class in New Orleans about a year ago. It was really cool, some of the redevelopment they're doing down there. But definitely historical issues and restrictions can impact the building process, so make sure you understand those. So the final bullet here is any ambiguous answers are going to be an impairment on the return on an investment and the ability to make your investors whole. Yeah, beware of chasing those profits. Okay, so more personal information from me. When I was, I'm going to say about 9 years old, I fell before we moved into the house with the trains. I fell out of a tree, and the firefighters that came in and the 911 people that came, they said they estimated I was 50 feet in the air when I fell, and luckily, very luckily, I landed in a muddy, swampy creek bank. And so that absorbed a lot of the impact from when I fell, probably kept me from getting killed in the process. So as a result of that, you can just guess how much I love heights. I mean, I was in Chicago once in what was known as the Sears Tower, or not Sears, was it Sears? I think it was Sears. And I was looking down, and I about got the willies. But let's juxtapose that with this guy. Okay, so this is a picture of the Empire State Building being built. And we can see this guy, and I can't see every expression on his face, but does he look really concerned to you? Because I'm telling you, he doesn't look very concerned to me. So this guy's up high. To me, there's huge risk here. You could not pay me enough money to be up on this building, and this guy is coming here every day and he eats lunch in the process. No big deal. So the important thing here is it doesn't matter if you don't see the risk in your property that you're trying to sell or the risk in your deal you're trying to get investors for. It's the perception of risk. If they perceive that something might happen, it's the same thing as it happening. So keep that in mind when you get frustrated because, well, the risk isn't there, but if people perceive it being there, it's the same. So key risk areas, of course, include the site conditions, any environmental hazards. Sometimes surrounding land uses may be noisy. Like right outside my office here, I've got a a daycare that twice a day when they come up for recess, they can be kind of loud. They don't really bother me because I've got children at home, but to some people that might be a risk factor. Project design. I got some friends that were building some multifamily out in San Diego, and one of the sites they took down, they bought, was going to require underground parking, which was, yes, you could build it, but it was going to cost an extra $1 million, and you'd never see the money back. So ultimately, the project's design was not constructible at a reasonable rate. So watch out for things that are odd when it comes to constructability or not normal. And of course, the market sector too. Residential is pretty good right now. Retail is new retail building space. If it's in a high growth area, there's more retail coming online. But in established areas, the retail sector is a little bit, in terms of rents and tenants, is a little bit questionable. So you want to watch out for the volatility and such in certain market segments. And then again, wherever you live, there might be segments that are just fine where I live, but are in distress where you live, and vice versa. And of course, watching out for inflation, which we see from time to time. And of course, make sure you get the right contractor that is knowledgeable about this project type. So why is it important to determine the land value early? Well, because we don't want to waste our time. If we're looking at hundreds of deals, we don't want to waste our time looking at deals that are never going to pencil out the right way. And then what do we need to know to determine if land is affordable? Well, by doing that residual land value calculation, we're going to know if we can bring this project in at a price that is going to meet the market, either from a lease or sale point of view. And then what challenges are facing land acquisition? Well, there's not enough time in the day to list all of the challenges and risks in land acquisition. Certainly finding things that make your project infeasible after you've closed on it is one of the challenges we'd like to avoid, of course. So these are right for me when I'm talking with a potential seller. I want to find out from them what circumstances might be, what am I missing? One of my favorite questions is, hey, what question didn't I ask that I should have? And you'd be surprised. People go, well, you didn't ask about this. Oh, well, tell me about that. We want to get as much information as we can from the owner, and I say while negotiating, because you're best friends with the seller as you're negotiating. But it's funny, as soon as you sign on the contract line, in their mind, you've already bought the land, and they become a whole lot less helpful and cooperative. So while we're still negotiating, I say, hey, can I get a copy of those files? I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that, and they're usually very, very willing to get you information quickly so that you can keep analyzing the deal, see if there's going to be any problems. If I've got a sophisticated seller, I might ask if I can meet with their engineers and surveyors, et cetera, and for an hour or so at their expense, just so I can better understand what's going on with the property. These are ULI suggestions here. We want to make sure that we never promise something we can't do. Be very careful. It's very easy for things to come out of your mouth that are just not possible or realistic. So always try to under-promise and over-deliver. This next bullet is key. You have to shape the purchase or the acquisition terms based on what you can and can't do. Don't agree to something. Don't just get it under contract even though you have no idea how you're going to close on it. That's a great way to lose a lot of money or set yourself up in the marketplace as one of those persons that all they do is get things under contract and then walk away from it. I have a friend who meets that criteria. Again, I said this before, I'll say it again, don't fall in love with the deal or the property. It's very hard to be dispassionate, but I want to encourage you, make sure you have someone in your life, whether it be a spouse, a partner, a parent, or a friend, that can, now those people can also talk you out of really great deals, so you got to be careful, but you want people that are going to ask you the hard questions that are going to temper your passion for that deal. So when we're making the offer, I like doing, again, a clear, short letter of intent. The terms in the letter, our purchase price. In fact, you might want to get your phone and take a picture of this slide. I know you're going to be sent a link to these slides, but you might want to, if you want to build your own letter of intent, it's going to have the terms. So how much you want to pay, when do you want to close on it, how much inspection time you need, how big is the deposit, how many deposits are there. I often have two. I have one at the beginning of the contract, and I have another one at the end of my inspection period, yet before closing. I want to know about, how long my deposit becomes refundable, usually through my inspection period. And then sometimes we'll have conditions that I want to meet prior to closing, like, hey, I want to make sure the rezone is complete for the project before I close, or 1 year. And that's an important point I want to bring up now, and I realize we're hitting on 5 o'clock. But you want to make sure that when you're doing a contract to purchase a piece of property, you always have an outside closing date. I'll get into this when we do the entitlement section, that I lost a deal that I was in for 4 years and spent $1 million on attorneys and such. Because there was not a closing date. It said when I got all my permits, then I would close, and it was determined by a judge that that's not a legal contract, and they were able to get out of it after I did all my work on the project. Anyway, I'll tell you the whole story about that on next Monday or Tuesday, I think. In hot markets, you may not have a luxury of an LOI, and I would say if you're doing less than 10 projects in your life, and it's a hot market, I would stay out of it, because hot markets, you can make a lot of money, but you can also, they're fickle, they move quickly, and I would hate to see any of you guys get burned in the process. So I would say if you can't use an LOI, it probably isn't right for you. There are people that want cash up front for you just to make an offer. There's tons of risk there, so be very, very careful. The letter of intent, I always say that I need 30 days to get to a formal contract agreement. So once I sign the letter, you sign the letter, then we need 30 days for my lawyer to draft the contract. And my 30 days sounds like a month. Man, let me tell you, it's like 10 seconds. The most important thing of this LOI is that you're basically setting up the concept of, I want to buy your land, I'm a serious player, and there's just a few things I need to make sure that we address before I actually sign the contract. And so, while often I've gone beyond the 30 days, what's more important is that meeting of the minds, that the seller knows that you're serious and you're honestly trying to get to the end. Another reason that attorneys bring up why you shouldn't use an LOI is because during the time before the contract is signed, they can sell the property to anyone else. I've only had that happen once, and let me tell you, I'm really glad it happened. Even though I could have made money on that deal, I believe sometimes the best deal you do is a deal that you don't do. So just because something slips through your hands doesn't mean that you are meant to do that. In fact, my first real estate partner said, if it was meant to be, it's meant to be, Dave. And it took me a long time to take that to heart, but she was absolutely right. When you try to force things, it usually means there's a problem in your future. I will say, as far as LOIs, if the property is less than $1 million, I will use a standard form contract prepared by my broker or realtor. They're 3 or 4 or 5 pages long, and less than $1 million, I'm fine. If it's more than $1 million, and what do I mean by that? I mean like 2, 3, 4, 5 million. Yeah, I'm going to want to use a lawyer to contract. It runs about $5,000 to have those done. So the beauty of having a signed purchase agreement is now that the property is known as being tied up, meaning that no one else can buy the property, and I can now do my inspection to make sure it meets my criteria. This is when the due diligence occurs, and again, we're going to be talking about that on Friday. I'm actually getting my contracts to do due diligence from my professionals while I'm still talking to the property owner. So that basically the second the ink is on the paper of the purchase contract, my people are already starting. And I'll say this again when we get into the due diligence deck, but I'll say it now, that the time goes so fast, you need to be able to start. You can't wait 30 days out of a 90-day inspection period to start your inspection. In fact, that's a sign of an amateur. You need to start on day 2. As soon as that contract is dry, the next day, boom, you're out, you're hiring surveyors and appraisers and whoever else you need to analyze the property to make sure it's suitable for your uses. And it's imperative that you make sure you have enough time to examine the property. And what does that mean? It depends on where you're from. Here we have species and wetlands issues. Depending on the size, sometimes I need 30 days, sometimes I need 6 months. It really just depends on the size and where the property is located and what the ecology is. I believe in communicating early and often with the seller, especially when I have a problem. On day 2, I'm not afraid to call them and say, you know what, I think I found a problem. I'm working on it. But come to find out, I found out blank. I found out that the road in front of your project might be set up for a moratorium, and I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this. If you can help me in any way, please do. And in the end, the seller might be able to help you because maybe they have friends that know things or they have information you don't have. But more importantly, when you get to the end of the inspection period, you say, you know what, remember that issue I brought to you on day 2? I still haven't solved that problem, and so I need more time. And because they know you brought it to them early, the seller is highly likely to give you more time because they know you're a serious player. Versus that seller or that buyer that comes to the table and says, well, it's been 89.5 days out of 90 days, and your project's all wrong for me, so you need to give me another 90 days. Whoa, 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 whoa. You can't come to me at the last minute like that and make that kind of statement. I need to know that you've been working on this all along and you're not just trying to renegotiate the deal. This next line, I've used this for deals from $3 million up to $10 million. I do $10,000 of deposit money on the front end at the signing of the contract, and then I raise that to a total of $100,000 at the end of my inspection period. And then at closing, I pay whatever is due after that, the final balance. The key is I'm trying to maximize, though, the period of delay between when I'm signing that contract and the end of the inspection period, and certainly closing. You know, if I can get someone to wait 2 or 3 years, and that's not common, but if I can, then more power to me. They're paying taxes, they're paying carry on the property, and I'm just paying for the entitlement process, which again is not small necessarily. It might be $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, but at least I'm not having to buy a $10 million piece of property and pay the interest on top of all of that. Some of the conditions to closing that I recommend is, obviously, you don't want to close if you don't have clear title. You don't want to close if you've got pollution on the property. That's that phase 1 environmental site assessment I mentioned on Monday. If you do have problems, you want to make sure you get a completed phase 2. Talk to your environmental professional about these. You don't need to memorize all this right now on this slide. Just make sure you have a phase 1 ESA written down. You need to talk to your environmental professionals and make sure that you have one of these. They're generally less than $3,000, and they're worth their weight in gold to note that there's no contamination. You want to make sure there's no eminent domain issues. And sometimes you might want to, when you're on the front end of a piece of property, you may not understand what limitations there are in terms of overlays. Like there was a piece of property I wanted to buy that had a noise overlay from an airport. I mean, the property looked fine, didn't have any wetlands, but it turns out 90% of it was covered by an overlay where I couldn't build any homes on it. So you might have a condition in your closing that I can't close if I can't use at least 40% of the property or 60% of the property or whatnot. And more times than not, I'm also going to ask for a change in entitlement at my expense. But I'll say, look, I'll close, but I'm going to get a rezone. And so if I get that done in 9 months, I'll close in 9 months. If it takes 12 months or 14 months, then I'll close at the end of 12 months, whatever the contract says. But I often want that change because I'm trying to supplement and do something different with the property. All right, final slide. So it's important here, you need to make sure you understand what you need to do your development, what kind of zoning you need, and what kind of use restrictions there might be on that land. We want to see if there's wetlands or endangered species that are prevalent in the area so that we know if it's even going to be an issue. Make sure you only structure deals that you know you can do and that minimize your chance of losing money. I like using LOIs to simplify the deal points to just see if there's a meeting of the minds or not. And then you got to know when it's better to walk away. When someone's just trying to negotiate for the sake of negotiation, and you'll spot that with more experience, you need to just walk away from that.